So if you're thinking about raising your prices, but you haven't yet done it, you probably should have done it a very long time ago. And that has kind of always been true. Most businesses raise their prices every year too. Like Starbucks, I don't know if you know this, but they raise their prices like a few pennies every few months. Just nobody notices. It's the funniest shit ever. Anyway, now, like more than ever, 2022 inflation was 6.8%. In 2023, it's already 4%. What that means for all you non-mathematicians like me who can't count to 7, it means that money that you had before 2022 is worth 6.8% less than it was after 2022. You have to raise their prices. Like everything has gotten much more expensive and people expect it. So in this episode, I'm not just going to tell you how to do it. We're going to tell you, or not to tell you that you should do it. We're going to tell you how to do it. But I also want to talk about like some of the things and some of the worries maybe of why you have been hesitating to raise your price. It's this idea. It's like, can I really be worth that much, right? Will people really pay that much for what I do? But then you look at other trainers and like, how are they charging so much? And there's a lot going on. There's kind of two, I don't know, you guys could tell me whether this approach is right or not. But to me, there's kind of two scenarios that we'll hit on here. One scenario is kind of the independent trainer, probably online, although it doesn't have to be. And this trainer was charging like for session or per month or every 2 weeks or whatever it is. Basically, like the way that they were communicating their pricing was in exchange for time, not in exchange for results. And so that's number one. The second is if you perhaps own a gym or you work in a gym or something and you don't have control over the positioning of it, how to just do like a basic price raise letter. And so to me, those are kind of the two situations. Does that make sense to tackle? And we're going to tackle them both.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
So let's first get back to the original question. What will my clients think? What will my people think if I'm going to raise my prices right now? What will they think? Are they all going to leave? Okay. Here's what, of 18 trainers that we spoke to, 15 of their responses were negative. Basically, we spoke to 18 trainers and we said, hey, if you were to raise your prices, what would your clients think? And 15 of the 18 were negative. 3 of them were like neutral or positive. So the neutral or positive answers were like, well, that's reasonable. Yeah, that's fair. That's about time. Now, I want to be clear. This is not the reality of what clients actually think. This is what the trainers said when we said, what do you think your clients are going to say? 15 of them said some version of, oh, my clients are going to tell me that I'm greedy. They're going to say, you just want my money. They're going to say, I'm offended. I feel let down. It's not worth it. Hey, what's in it for me? Or they're going to be worried and say something like, I quit. These objections do not reflect what the majority of your clients will think about when you raise your prices. These objections reflect your own fears. I'm going to say that again. These objections do not reflect what the majority of your clients will think about when you raise your prices. They reflect your own fear. But even then, think about it like this. If some of your clients leave because you raise your prices, is that such a bad thing? I don't think so. Right now you might be listening to this and you're kind of over busy and underpaid. Anyway, you may as well be under busy and underpaid as a way to kind of get out of this hole so that you can become overpaid and under busy.
Oh, there's a T-shirt somewhere in that. I don't know where it is, but I love it. That was so perfect the way that you said it. Oh my god!
I always need a good procrastination project. I'll make one.
Right. Thank
Yeah,
you,
there you
Amber.
go.
Are you here?
If you raise your prices 10%, you can lose 10% of your customers and make the same amount of money. And like, in this day and age, especially if you haven't raised your prices for a long time, I don't think 10% is unreasonable to raise your prices. We're going through unprecedented inflation, like everybody's seeing it. And yeah, I mean, it's causing a lot of pain, but like it's causing you a lot of pain as well. Okay. Where do we want to go from here, guys? Which do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about the changing how you're communicating your pricing as a way to increase your prices, or do we want to talk about first just like a basic, hey, how do you send a letter? How do you like announce to your clients that it's going to happen?
Man, I gotta tell you, John. I think even I don't know how much time we have here. Well, that's not true. I know exactly how much time we have.
We don't have a lot to say here, and
okay, good.
We probably will not take up an hour with this topic.
Good.
So talk away, my friend.
Because I think that
there's not a lot to say.
There's not a lot to say. Right.
Like there's not a lot to say. Like do it, dope.
Yeah.
Like
do it.
Well,
do it, dope.
We can add an option of how do we know when it's time? Like when to identify, not just from an annual perspective to meet inflation, right? If you raise your price to meet inflation, you're making the same amount of money as you always were. Right. But what are other indicators? Like there are other instances where you should be looking at your pricing to see if it's the time to price raise. I mean, I'm a huge fan of looking every 6 months as a benchmark, like comparing how much time you are actually investing in your clients and overhead versus what you thought, right? Because it can change over time, right? Your software prices increase, or you spent more time or even less time than you thought with clients, what have you. And so you need to make sure that you're still on track, right? And you're still getting paid appropriately to prevent any resentment later down the line.
And I'd like to interject here that I think that even on a more basic level, just some brief, covering of sort of limiting beliefs, right? Self-limiting. I remember I asked you, John, you might not remember this, but I remember early on in my career, like coming out of OTA level 1, because I came into OTA level 1 charging $65 US a month for training and nutrition. Right?
A lot of pennies.
Pennies.
Not many pennies. Not many dollars, but a whole lot of pennies, my friend.
A whole lot of pennies. But this was a reflection of my own self-limiting beliefs. Like growing up in a household where the conversation was that people who had money had robbed people or were or were bad people or swindled people. And I identified as a good person. So conversely, I couldn't have money because that would mean that I was one of those bad people. And I think you turned me on to psychology of money, if I'm not mistaken.
It's very possible.
Which sort of opened the thought process. So I think one thing that we see is that we come into it with so many self-limiting beliefs, which is why 15 of those 18 trainers said, "You greedy bastard," right? It's not real, but it's what they feel like. One of
the things that is very interesting, Morgan Housel talks about this in Psychology of Money, is your views and reactions and emotional responses to money are very reflective of what was going on economically at the time when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
For example, kids that are growing up now, all that they know are massive periods of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
It will be so normalized to them when they're in their 20s and 30s that prices go up. Prices and things go up. We grew up at a time that was actually, if you look at it chart-wise, incredibly stable. Like I think 1982, I can't remember what the stats that I have here. 1982 was like the highest level of inflation, but the 1990s were actually a very stable financial time. Additionally, it was a time when stocks were also very, very stable. 98, there was a bit of a crash. And then like 2008, like killed everybody, right?
Right.
And so my point in all of this is, for much of my formative years, and probably yours too, listening to this, like I'm 37, if you're anywhere in your like 30s or 40s, you probably grew up at a time when there was not a lot of inflation. A, that's not normal.
Right.
Historically. But B, you have to understand that that actually formalized a lot of your emotional responses to money and how you feel about money, and what it's supposed to do, or what's okay for it to do, or what it doesn't do. That was definitely covered in that book. He gave like different timelines, and it's like, if you're this old, like here's what you probably think. If you're this old, here's what you probably think, right?
And that plays a you look at that and sprinkle a little imposter syndrome on it, and chef's kiss.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
You've got a sprinkle. Perfect cocktail for undercharging and feeling good about it, and subsequently resenting your industry, resenting everybody. You resent yourself. You get pissed off at your clients. You resent the fitness and wellness space. Like, it's just a powder keg of resentment.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this part of this problem starts, in valuing yourself and what you're worth, is that you just feel like maybe you're not supposed to have money, that you're wrong for wanting to be paid your value.
And then you start going into groups of other people like you, and you start saying things like, oh, I'm just here to help people.
Yes.
Right? I don't make money. And you get all these likes from other people who are basically, patting themselves on the back because they aren't making enough money to live a good life either, right? And it just becomes this kind of self-selecting downward spiral circle. So A, get yourself out of those communities. But also, the two aren't mutually exclusive. Like, you can make a lot of money and you can help people. In fact, you will help way more people if you make a lot of money and have a good business. What I think also happens, the other part of this, what I really love about what Amber said about, it wasn't necessarily raise your price every 6 months. It was just set a reminder in your calendar to check in every 6 months and think about it. Because what often happens is, if you haven't raised, I speak to people who haven't raised their price in 10 years. And it's at that point, it becomes difficult, because then to catch up, you really have to make a noise. Versus, really, if you think about it, prices should go up more or less on average 3 to 4%, just to cover inflation. I'm not even talking about improvements in your service, investments that you've made in your own education to be better, right? I'm not talking about any of those things. Purely to cover inflation, prices should go up 3 to 4%. So what does that mean? If you charge $60 an hour, let's say, if you're in the gym or your service or whatever, if you charge $60 an hour, one point you should charge $62.50. The next point, like, that's what it means. And if you do that every year, you inch up. But if you catch yourself at, oh, I'm $40 and I need to catch up, well, 40 to $62.50 is a pretty big jump. Like, if I was the customer, I would have I'd be taken back. I'd be taken back. So I think that's the final kind of piece of it is, if you have not done this for a long time, start and set a schedule to catch up. Like, instead of doing 3 to 4% every 6 months, maybe do 6-7%, right? Every 6 months, 8 months, just to catch up to the point where you should be at, kind of, anyway. And then don't get behind. So I like that you said that, Amber, where we're just check in every 6 months. Like, hey, have I done big bouts of education or self-development or whatever? And then you can also just check in. Like, it's super easy. You just Google inflation rate increase and you'll get the CPI index, and it'll tell you what it did. And you can say that to your clients too. Yeah. They know that everything's going up.
The other big thing to look for too, to know if you should raise your prices, is if you're really busy, right? Like, if you were like really busy and kind of ran ragged, odds are you could probably raise your price a fair bit, and at least get yourself some time back. So,
yeah, at a certain point in time, at a certain point in time, if you're going to grow, you need to become less busy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting phenomenon. Like, I could show you my calendar and you would laugh at how few things I have booked.
I have seen it.
It's like this podcast twice a week. It's kind of it. Every once in a while, I'll do another call with somebody. And that allows me to do a lot of what I do. Now, I work well without constraints, which I realize is kind of weird and different. Like, I don't need goals to accomplish things. I'm fine putting in the work day in and day out and knowing that at one point it's going to turn into something, like with a book or whatever. So that's kind of weird. But at the same time, you have to have space to think, to be creative, to do stuff that is not going to provide immediate payoffs to invest in your future. Maybe that's content. Maybe that's just like learning about how wealth management and money works, which I think is very important. Maybe that's up-leveling skills. That could be interpersonal skills. Maybe that's becoming a better presenter, speaker, or writer, and actually going and investing in education and practice and putting in that work. It's not going to result in immediate business, but it's going to increasingly over time insulate you against any outside factors that could take you out of the game, really affect you. I never would want to fall prey to somebody else deciding on my career.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I were to work for somebody else, I don't want to have to work for somebody else. If that makes sense. Let's talk about just basic price raise, like communications first.
Mm-hmm.
I think. And then at the end of it, we'll talk, because the end of it is like a bigger conversation, I feel, is, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't actually be pricing in return for your time. The way that you're compensated, the way that you're incentivized for what you do is actually a very important decision to make. It's incentives, and designing incentives properly is the first step to having the right kind of outcomes. And there aren't necessarily right or wrongs, but you have to think about what outcome you want. Like, if you want to get away from the trading time for money trap, well, you should not communicate your prices in exchange for time.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds obvious, but that's an example of a lot of trainers say, hey, I don't want to exchange my time for money. But at the same time, they're saying, oh, by the way, if you want to work with me, it's $60 an hour or it's $300 a month. And there's a disconnect there, isn't there? Where the incentives don't align with the desired business model or the outcome. And so it needs to change. But that's a bigger change. So we'll get into that more at the end. In terms of how to actually just raise your prices, like I can read you a letter. This comes from Ryan Ferguson. He wrote an article on the PTDC years back. It was a very good article. And the simple strategy, and some people disagree with me on a few points here, and I'll talk about their point too. And I don't think even there's necessarily a right or wrong. It's just a matter of what you're more comfortable with. But set a date 4 to 6 weeks in advance. Write a personal letter to each of your clients. Now, I mean, look, use a template, but write a personal letter, email, right? In the letter, you're going to tell the client that starting at the set date, all new members, all new customers are going to be charged your new fee, whatever it is. And then say that because of their loyalty and commitment, their fee is only going to increase, whatever, half that amount. So if you're $60 an hour and you're going to $70 an hour, you say to people in this letter, hey, due to my increase in experience, demand for my service, and inflation, and the how the economy's going, my rate's going to go up to $70 on this date due to your commitment. Love working with you. Yours is going to go up to 65. Right. Some people disagree with me on the idea of grandfathering in a rate. Pete Dupuis, for example, really, really smart guy, CSP, performance, great, does some business coaching too. He disagrees with me. He's like, nah, if you raise your rates, you raise your rates. Like, it's the same for everybody. Um, I see both sides. I kind of like if I'm going to make a price raise to do it like make a pretty significant price raise. And that's for two reasons. One is it's a way to reward loyalty, and I think that it's important to reward loyalty. I think that in business, businesses start by getting customers, businesses succeed by keeping customers. And the longer you can keep customers, the better. But I also think that a price raise is actually a great opportunity to generate new business. And it's effectively a launch with an end date, with urgency, right? Which is one of the most raising your price is one of the most compelling reasons for people to buy now that have been on the fence. It's actually a fantastic opportunity to generate new customers. And so you should plan promotions around this. But it has to be a significant enough price raise for it to make a difference. So what you can say to people is, hey, price is going to go up from whatever, $60 to $80. Right? New customers are going to pay $80. On this date, everybody who buys now will be grandfathered in on the loyalty rate of $70, for example. And what that allows you to do then is it allows you to make a big promotion to anybody you've been nurturing, anybody who might be, on social media, you can make announcements around it. If you have an email list, you can make announcements around it. And you have an end date. You say on September 5th, prices are going to go up. Buy before then, you're going to get it at the loyalty rate. If you wait and buy afterwards, you're going to get it afterwards. I think that's a fantastic way to generate new business. Let me read you just a letter that you can send. And so that's why I fight back a little bit on because if you raise them for everybody, you lose the marketing element of hey, you can do this kind of as a launch. But at the same time, it becomes harder to raise it a large amount if you need to raise it a large amount. So here's a basic letter that you can send to people, for example. Dear Michael, and again, this comes from Ryan Ferguson. This is not mine. He's a great gym owner, wrote an article for the PGDC. Dear Michael, thank you for your commitment to ongoing training. I know it's been a challenging journey for you, but it's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and I look forward to seeing you get down to 12% body fat for your sister's wedding. The reason for this letter is to inform you of some changes that are about to take place. Due to increase in experience and demand for service over the last 12 months, on the 1st of April, my charge-out rate to all new clients will increase from the current rate of $60 per hour to $80 per hour. However, because of your loyalty and commitment, for you, this won't be the case. For you, the new price will be $70 an hour. You'll continue on at this reduced rate until the 1st of July. If you have any questions or need to make any adjustments in light of this new payment scheme, please feel free to ask. Here's to your health and fitness. Signed, Ryan. I like a lot of parts about that letter. There's a few things that I don't love. What I do like about that letter is that he made it specific to the client and their goals and what they're working towards, down to 12% body fat for the sister's wedding. There was a loyalty thing. I didn't like that he used the word scheme. I don't know. There's something about the word scheme that I don't really like this new payment system, this new whatever, this new price. like you could use other words. I don't know. The word scheme just comes off wrong.
Scheme is yucky.
Yeah, I mean it's nitpicking, but I wouldn't use that word. But and then the other thing that he did here, which is a little bit different, is he allowed the loyalty with a certain end date to the loyalty pricing, which I actually like.
Yep.
I think that's good. Hey, you're not going to be forever at this price. Because then what happens when your price goes up to $100? You're still going to be training some people at 60? that's $70 or whatever it is. Doesn't make sense because then you're like holding those people in contempt, right? So I do like that he had that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, John, like we can agree to disagree on the methodology of the what's in the letter, specifically what point you ask, how you do it. But I, I feel confident saying that we can pretty much all agree that if you just did anything in regards to raising your prices, like if you messed it all up, but you actually tried on a regular basis to do it, be so much better off than people who don't, because most people will not do this for whatever reason. And I can say that because I was most people. So if you kind of just tried it all, to do anything at all, to say my prices are going up in any way, probably have a much happier career than if you didn't do that. Yeah.
To me, this is a lot like how you would celebrate a client, right? A client has hit this new goal. They've put in this work, they've invested in themselves, and they've made a lot of progress. And your business is the same way and deserves that same excitement. You've done the work, you've done the research, you've invested in all of that stuff. So you can approach this with that same excitement, and just come with that energy so they can celebrate with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Look, I mean, I do think that you should show personal respect, that you should honor your client. I don't think that you should be like cocky about why you're increasing your price. Like, I got so much better, right? Like, it's about them.
Yeah, no.
But there are reasons why you're doing it. Like, you did get better. You invested into yourself. You bought these courses. You invested in Quick Coach Pro, and you have a custom branded app, and so you're spending money on their experience, and that's the service that you're offering. It's a great service, but giving them some forewarning and giving them an opportunity to discuss it with you. Most people are going to get back, and they're just going to be like, "Yeah, that's cool." But some people might say, "Look, I got to go down from 3 to 2, or I need to take a step back," and you have a conversation with them, and that happens. People might not be able to afford it anymore.
But you'll also get the messages that say it's about damn time.
You will get a lot of messages that say it's about damn time.
Dude,
when the CrossFit studio that I'm in, when he told me how much it cost, I just looked at him and just laughed. I was just like, you need to charge way more than that, dude. Like, I'll pay it, but you need to charge way more than that. And he's still not, which is fine. It's fine with me that he's not, but like, he should. His rent went up from, God, what was it? His rent went up from something like $6 a square foot to $16 a square foot in the last 3 years.
Holy cow. Jeez.
How much does he owe Vinny?
Exactly.
It probably is a Vinny too, knowing where the gym is.
Holy crap.
But that is what's happening. Like, I don't need to tell you this if you run a brick and mortar and your lease is expiring.
God.
This is what's happening in a lot of major cities, Toronto especially, but like in a lot of major cities, this is what's happening.
Jeez.
So what is that, a 2.5 times increase in rent? Okay, well, everything else is going up and getting more expensive too, software, whatever. This guy is not raising his prices 2.5 times. It's a hard position to be in. And Vinny breaks knees.
He certainly does. That's all Vinny does.
I do this with students all the time. They'll come to me and we'll talk about pricing, and they'll tell me what they're currently doing. And I'm like, okay, like literally, let's do the math. You're charging however much, right? Take out 30% for taxes, and I'm being generous. And not only are you
clearly don't live in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Well, not only are you that's being kind. And not only are you paying normal taxes, but you also have to pay like self-employment taxes to make up the other part that you're if you were working for someone else would have to pay. Right. And also take out your payment gateway. right? And then so all of a sudden,
so another, that's
just
like
with that
payment
alone,
processing. That's another like 3%.
yeah, exactly.
Basically.
More, yeah. PayPal's 3.49% plus 40 cents per transaction.
Yeah.
So,
and they keep
just
going
from
up.
that alone,
Especially if you work online, card processing fees keep going up. I got a message from Stripe a couple weeks ago, saying that it's going up. We pay like $70,000 a year in payment processing. Like, it makes me cry when I see those reports.
Yeah,
and then our accountant is like, "Well, at least it's a write-off." It's like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't make me feel better.
It doesn't make me feel better that it's a before tax expense, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I mean, that didn't even take into account insurance if you're self-employed and your spouse doesn't work. Nothing else. Like nothing else.
I mean, most people are making peanuts.
So what are you saying? So you're basically saying like just do the basic math if you're worried about this, and just say, hey, what are my inflows and outflows? Which sounds funny. What are my inflows and outflows? And you have to think about taxes.
Yeah, you better.
Jeez.
You better think about taxes.
It's just a good reality check. When I do that with most students, they're just gobsmacked at how little it is by the time that they account for everything. And everyone always spends more time doing stuff than they realize.
Yes.
You know, so they're, some of them are making minimum wage in South Carolina. That's $7.25 an hour, you know, because they devote so much time.
That's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Carolinas.
So, yeah.
That is crazy.
Welcome to the South.
I think minimum wage in Ontario is like $16 now.
Yeah. So we have a low minimum wage and a high cost of living. Yeah. Yay.
It's a combo deal.
Yes, $16.55 is minimum wage in Ontario.
Yeah.
Cars will fly literally before we get our minimum wage up to that high, John.
So one of the ways,
so far in the future.
One of the ways, well, ours is Canadian dollars too. So, subtract 30% basically from that, and you have your equivalent in US.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways that we teach one of the first things that we do with our mentorship students is we help them raise their prices a fair bit. Because there's always a fair bit of low-hanging fruit. I have found that with a lot of people who work in fitness, it's often, especially people who have some experience and have some experience of getting people results and have some success in their belt behind them. I don't know what the right way to say that is. But we found that there's often like just a couple kind of select things that make a big difference. And meanwhile, they're not working on those couple precise things. Instead, they're trying to like win the internet and like dominate content or something. Meanwhile, it's like, well, actually, if you just increased your price to where it should be, for example, and you fixed your offerings and templated it and made it more efficient in this way, you would make 3 times more money in 70% of the time. And we map it out with numbers. It's amazing, these spreadsheets. Like, we map it out with numbers and we're like, okay, well, here's how the numbers lay out. Do you think this is feasible? All right, cool. Let's tackle one thing at a time. Instead of saying the global, like, I'm going to work on my business. It's like, no, business isn't a thing to work on. What you've got to do is you've got to break it back and say, what's the one thing I'm tackling today? What's the one lever that I'm going to pull? And then if you can, and this is what we help people do in the mentorship, quantify it in some way and look at it and say, all right, well, if I have 5 more conversations with people a day, that's going to lead to 1.5 more sales calls. At the same time, if I work on improving, these are all done in like different, basically 2-week sprints. If I improve my sales call conversion from 50 to 65%, okay, well, if I take those 5 calls, if I take those 5 conversations and I increase it to 10, and then I improve my conversion rate from conversation to sales call, and instead of having, 1.5 of every 5 people I talk to, I have 2 of every 5 people I speak to. Well, now I'm going to have 4 calls. And I'm going to convert at 70%, not 50%. And you start to see how these levers start to compound upon one another. And it's really quite radical change very quickly when you're able to break it down that way. And raising prices is often one of the first levers we pull, just because it's the easiest, it's quick, it's immediate. But there's a lot of it just saying to somebody like, hey, raise your price, push it up. It's kind of hard to do, especially to the extent that we usually work with people to do it. Instead, we do a stepwise approach, because you have to be confident when you're communicating your price. You have to communicate it with conviction. And if you're charging $200 and we say you need to charge $700, you're probably going to sound like Millhouse asking out Lisa. Hey, so I can help you get the booty that you said you wanted for summertime, and we can do that. The price is going to be
solid Millhouse, John.
$800, if that's okay with you. But no, you got to be speaking with conviction. It's very hard to do.
Leaned into a Steve Urkel there at the end. He dropped off into a Steve Urkel.
Was that a Steve Urkel at the end?
Yeah, it was leaning into, did I do that? Like, you were very close to that. But it started well. It's admirable
Thank you.
job there. Well done.
Thank you. I'm doing it now. For anybody. Thank you. So I arrange my papers on my desk. So what you do is every time that you make a sale, you push it up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So if you're at, let's say, 200 and you want to eventually get up to 500, right? You've just decided it might take you half a year to get up to 500. So you're at 200 and the next person you speak to, you pitch them 250. Mm-hmm. And you pitch 250 until somebody buys at 250. And then the next person you might pitch. You can't do this in a gym, but you could absolutely do this if you have an online program or if you're an independent trainer. And the next person you pitch at 275 or 300. And you wait until one or two people buy at that. And then you go 300 or 350. And you keep pushing it up. Because what that allows you to do is somebody buys at 300, and we see this all the time. And we get a text message anytime one of our mentorship students sells their first package in full to a new client at their new price point. And we celebrate with them. And you can just see, it's like, oh shit, no, I am worth that.
Right.
Because somebody said that I was worth that. Somebody signed on because I'm worth this amount. Now you believe it yourself. And it might take you 2 or 3 sales at a new price point before you want to push up to the next. That's just a matter of comfort. So that stepwise fashion is a way to kind of add more conviction, add more confidence kind of into this process if you're more of an independent. But taking a step back, going to a conversation that we kind of started this whole bit with, we said we were going to hit back on, which is you kind of want to get away from the trading time for money trap. And it's very hard to do that if you're working in a gym. Some gyms do sell transformation packages. I haven't really seen that done well over the long term. There was I won't call it a very successful gym marketing company. It was a gym marketing company that made a lot of money, but they've left a series of bankruptcies in their wake. So I wouldn't call them very successful because they were so good at marketing. But what happened was they taught all of the people that paid them tens of thousands of dollars, $20,000, $30,000. They taught all of them the system for customer acquisition, which was based on short-term transformations. But then they weren't able to continue that service. And so the fall off rate was super, super high. So in gyms, I have yet to see transformation packages really, really work well over the long term at scale. Maybe it does. I just haven't really seen it. but online or independent trainers absolutely have. I mean, we teach it. And the secret is, instead of being a jack of all trades, try to be a master of one. It can be scary, like going back to like a niche thing. It's not quite like a niche thing, but it's just like, what do you help? Who do you help people become? Right? What's in their head? Who do they want to become? What's their journey like? Okay, how vividly can you paint a picture of that? And then you're the bridge between where they are and where they want to be. And then it's just a matter of not selling somebody a phone bill. Hey,
Right.
when you work with me, you get one new program every 4 weeks. A phone call with me every 2 weeks. That's 30 minutes long. Check-ins, access to my Facebook group. Nobody cares. You got to make it personal to them. It's that so what versus so that. Hey, we're going to get you to that whatever end result. Hit me with an end result of somebody.
Lose 2 inches off the waistline.
For what reason? Why?
So you can wear your summer clothes on vacation with your darling husband who you've been avoiding.
All right. Look, Miranda. I can't tell you right now exactly how many times I'm going to change your program or send you a new meal plan, because the truth of the matter is I'm going to give you what you need, how you need it, when you need it. And this is going to be a relationship that we're going to build over time. My job is to help you. We're going to say this again?
Yeah, lose. My job is to help you fit back into those summer clothes and bikinis so you can be enthusiastic and feel sexy with your husband on vacation again this year.
And that's going to include some combination of helping you with your habits, managing time with your family. Yeah, we're going to get workouts, right? I'm going to work with you to get stuff that you enjoy doing. Like, it's going to be hard, like, don't get me wrong, but stuff that you enjoy doing. And we're going to be working on your nutrition a bit in a way that fits for you and your family. But the goal is the same. How does that all sound? Right. Whatever. And in 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever. So when you start communicating what you're selling as a way to help them become a certain type of person, you're now not locked into this idea of X amount of dollars for Y amount of time. How do you put together your packages and stuff, Ryan? What are you doing now?
In terms of just what the offer is or how I explain it?
Yeah, well, both. What's the offer? How do you explain it?
The offer has changed for me over time, but now I'm at the point where I am talking more so about feeling like you own your body again, because a lot of my clientele, moms over 30, going through the perimenopause, the postmenopause thing, and one recurring theme that I hear is like, this doesn't even feel like my body anymore. I feel like it's betrayed me. And I sort of lean into, if you want to feel like you own your body again, like when you ask it to do things, it does it. That's what we do here. You're never going to feel disconnected again the way you did the last 3 years as you entered into your early 40s. Don't you want that feeling back? Of feeling like I can call on this body. I can dress it. I can expect it to perform. I feel good in it. That's what we're going to do. And then I talked very little about the actual program. I mean, we mentioned this on our episode about
let's
sales.
Take a step back there, because you use their language so vividly there.
Yes.
That to
it would make most women cry.
And what words, what phrases, Amber?
All of it, right? Because that's like, if a woman had to say, like, to actually say those things, right? Like, it would make her very emotional, like to feel like things are happening to her body. She doesn't have control over it, that to be able to do the things that she's asking of it, that like is deeply painful to not be able to do that. And most of the women that I know do feel that way. And hearing someone else say that, and to hear what they've been saying in their head spoken out loud by someone else and they feel heard and understood, like I think most of them would get super teary thinking about that. And like then he doesn't have to sell at that point. He's fucking done.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Do whatever.
It shows a level of understanding, of depth, that would be very hard to match.
and to tie it into what we're talking about, when you raise your prices, there's an impetus that causes you to be a better professional. Like that's probably the other side of it. Like you let yourself off the hook with a $65 a month program, right?
Yes.
I don't have to be all that excellent at $65, $500 a month. And now I'm reading every fucking book I can about menopause, right? I'm listening to people intently, right?
Such a great
I consider myself excellent at a certain price point, right? And not at a lower price point. So raising your prices, this is why you can't get referrals. This is why you can't get renewals. You're performing at the level that you're valuing your own services. And that's a super important point, man. You don't fuck around with people when they
Okay, so tell me how your package is, and if you're comfortable saying like how your pricing works.
So I do $1,200 for a 12-week program.
Okay.
And that's up from, like I said, originally $65 a month, and up again from $700 a month, with $750 when I came out of level 2 OTA, up to $900, not $900 a month, $900 over the 12 weeks shortly after that. And then I did the stair step thing. So I was looking at,
is key. Yeah.
I was looking at 3 sales at a certain dollar amount.
Okay.
I was inching along by $50 increments.
Okay.
But if I get 3 sales, I move it up by $50, because where I was trying to get to was $1,200 for the 12-week program. And then, legacy notwithstanding, blah, 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 renewals, etc.
Yeah. So how does so 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we all know that the journey isn't a 12-week journey.
Absolutely not.
So how do you communicate that, continue on? How does that all work with you?
Yeah, and we talked, I don't know if it's appropriate to mention that episode, but we talked about that on a previous episode, the renewal strategy. Number one is letting them know that there is the possibility of continuing, like setting the precedent. We don't do that well enough, as early enough as we should. Now, obviously, we're going to work this initial 12 weeks. And I'm sure you're wondering, but yes, of course, we have places that we can go after that, depending on what our results are, which I expect to be phenomenal based on who you are, based on who I am and my experience. And, I don't work with people that I don't think can achieve that goal, obviously. So after 12 weeks, we'll know what we've got. We'll have a little bit more data. We'll be able to accelerate your progress after that because we'll know each other better. We'll talk about that when it comes to it. I'll give you some inclination along the way about where I think you are along that path, and we'll make sure we earn our way to that next phase, right? Like, so for me, mentioning that in a kickoff call allows me to plant the seed, initiate the thought that they somehow need to earn it, and that it's a privilege to go forward, right? That's important. But just knowing that there's something after this is important too. It's like telling a baby that you're going to die one day is a morbid way to say it, but there's not really an end point here. And then from that point, it's just a matter of having great service. And again, that includes having a price. Sometimes you need a price that'll make you go to work, right?
Yeah.
Like
I think that's such a good point. I never thought about it that way. I've literally never thought about it that way.
Yeah, like I don't, 60. How good do you think my service was at $65 a month? I mean, and that wasn't a function of my skill set, right? It's just $65 a month.
How much can you do for that much? Yeah,
right.
You start making excuses.
Am I willing to do for somebody?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amber. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just saying, I was supposed to, send them a message, but I'm tired. I'll do it tomorrow. Something simple like that. Those little things. Yep. They're only paying me $65 a month. I'm not worried about if I'm on time or not.
Right. And then resentment sets in for you as a coach. The fitness business doesn't work.
Yeah.
Training doesn't work. It's a terrible business. Now you made it terrible. You built a terrible version of that business for yourself.
My kids are being super cute outside.
Are they?
Oh.
So I'm going to cut this because I want to go hang out with them.
You should. We've talked enough.
So if you're looking for another episode to listen to, I'm going to recommend episode 18. It's called Building a High Profit, High Impact Coaching Program. The fundamental question that this episode answers is, why do some coaches sell programs for thousands while others can't sell them for 20? We get into the nitty-gritty details of exactly how to deliver and position a program that way so that you can, A, get paid what you're worth, B, deliver the value in exchange for that higher price point. So that's episode 18, Building a High Profit, High Impact Coaching Program. Okay, I'm going to go play with my kids now. Bye-bye.
Value.
Bye.